So since you were already following Bruce,
Yeah.
and so you've gotten, I always call it the memo in the mail. Like, did somebody send you
Yeah.
the memo that we were going to head into a downturn? And if you were following Bruce, then yes, you did. You were one of
Yes,
the people who did
exactly
get the
it.
memo. So
That's
how'd
actually
you,
when, yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah. So I was going to say that's how FIBI started.
Right.
Is
Yes, it
that
is. Yeah.
right? Because it was right at that time when everybody was like too euphoric about real estate. And then I was like making the call. I remember Jeremy and I saying, this is just, there's a lot of bad signs out there. And it was brutal because so many people were just, oh no, you got to buy, you got to buy. It's just a temporary hiccup. And we're like, no, 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 this is serious. I went to see Bruce, and all the numbers made as much sense as they did when I first saw him when he did the California comeback. He did, the California, the meltdown. And I started to get out of Dodge. I started cleaning out my portfolio and moving to safer havens. And and I told Bruce this, I said, you really saved my life, my financial life,
Yeah.
because you helped me grow my portfolio. And then much later, you helped me protect it.
Right.
So, yeah.
I am Christina Suter, and this is the Real Estate Breakthrough Show, where we talk about the reality of real estate, the mindset you need in order to face the reality of what it is, and tips and tricks to get you moving forward in investing. I am your host, Christina Suter. Today I have with me Ellis San Jose. So Ellis, he stands out to me, and how I know Ellis is that he's actually one of the founders of the For Investors by Investors Network. That's how I happen to know him, but that is not by a long shot all who Ellis is. So let me give you a little bit of his bio, and then we can get into some stories and some history and the fun stuff. So Ellis San Jose is a real estate broker, trustee broker, investor, and complex real estate transactions problem solver. So yes, we heard solving problems, as I often talk about, is a major part of your level of success in real estate. Thus the title of my show, Breaking Through, right? Breakthrough Real Estate, or Real Estate Breakthrough. You may have all heard the 3 L's of real estate: location, location, location. I deal with the ugly L's of real estate: litigation, long distance ownership, or a long story why they can't sell the property, or private loan note. Be a hero to your clients. I untangle and clean up complicated real estate situations, vacant houses, hoarder homes, title issues with missing or deceased owners. That is what Ellis is currently working on. But Ellis, that is only a small fraction of your actual history. I
Oh,
mean, come
yeah.
on. I mean, you started
I've done a
somewhere
ton.
else. So let's talk about a little bit about your history in real estate, how you got here, and
Okay.
then what you're up to currently.
Okay, so the history goes back to helping my dad. When I was in high school, my father was leaving the Navy. He was a 20-year career guy in the Navy, and when he found out his retirement was going to be woefully, uh, um, under what he needed to support a family of me and my 3 sisters, he started to learn about real estate. So I was helping him fix up
Yeah.
houses to rent out in the Ventura County area. I think his retirement was like $865 a month, even adjusted for inflation. That's not a whole lot of money. So I was watching him, buy houses from people that were usually in the Navy that were being relocated somewhere else, so they had to sell. And then I was spending a lot of my weekends painting, pulling weeds, etc. So that was my first kind of taste of real estate. And then when I got old enough to go to college, he introduced me to a group of investors who specialize in buying on the courthouse steps, trustee sales, basically, in the auctions.
Mm-hmm.
And so that just kind of lit my fire, because that was my first exposure to seeing how, you can buy houses for pennies on the dollar. And when I first started with them, I think they had 12 properties, and when I left, they had 100. So that was my kind of, I call that my college education, because that was so much more invigorating to learn the real estate business hands-on as an 18-year-old, and just driving foreclosures, going to the auctions, etc. And then consequently, when I graduated, of course, I wanted to do real estate. But one of my biggest lessons about real estate is the cyclical nature of real estate. Just because something works, a few years ago,
Right, exactly.
doesn't mean it's going to work again. So I was kind of stuck. And when we hit, there was a big recession in '89. That's when I bought my first property. It was a duplex in Ventura County. And then I just saw the value just go down and down and down and down. It was just horrible. And
Yeah.
that was one of my biggest lessons, not to get a big ego, and to always learn how to kind of shift with whatever the market is going to give you. And And I actually quit real estate after that. I went into becoming a stockbroker for many years. And it took,
I can understand that. My sympathy and empathy are with you on that.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. It was really hard for the confidence, right, to buy a duplex, getting excited, and then just seeing yourself lose money. And then when I became a stockbroker, I met somebody by the name of Bruce Norris, who you probably have heard of.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
he was talking about the California comeback and how, according to his data, real estate was going to double and triple in value over the next few years. And I was like, wow, I know real estate. And I was, when I was a financial representative, a financial planner for a lot of my clients, they had a lot of holdings in real estate. And I said, I want to be one of those guys. So I started buying real estate while I was a stockbroker. And I bought some single family, and I also bought some multifamily. And by the time, gosh, it was when did 9/11? Was that 2001? In 2001,
91101. Yep.
yeah, that was a big kind of wake up call for me saying, look, are you going to want to do what you love to do, which was real estate, or are you going to, keep going to the office wearing the suit and everything, meeting clients, which, although I enjoyed that for a while, it wasn't my passion anymore. So I quit being a stockbroker and went into real estate full time and started trying to buy foreclosures, more multifamily, and consequently ran into another cycle where it was very difficult to buy foreclosures. And it gave me my entree into learning about notes. And that's where I built a lot of my success early on, was specializing in buying non-performing notes when nobody was really doing it way back when.
And you did that for a while, the non-performing notes. You did it for your own portfolio. You taught it for a while. That was sort of like what Ellis was known for, was his notes.
Right.
But
I have the website, The Note Guys.
That's right. You have the website, The Note Guys, right?
Yeah,
And you had a partner you were doing it with for a while, but then that shifted too.
It did, yeah. What happened was it started to become kind of the latest shiny object for a lot of people, and the way that the market started to turn, even though I had a lot of success early on, I started to see that with more competition, people were willing to pay more for what I felt wasn't the right risk quotient. So I started to pull back from that and look for the next place to kind of specialize in, because I kind of got very spoiled about being a specialist and an insider where there wasn't a lot of competition. I really don't like when it becomes so over competitive that people start making mistakes and overpaying for assets. And that's what I saw was coming.
Well, and also, that's what other people are doing, but also it muddles your playing field as well. Like it muddles you being able to make sound decisions. It muddles you being able to get a solid note. It muddles, it makes people who are making the decisions make mistakes, which you don't want to see and you don't really want to be a part of, but it also muddles your capacity to just say, hey, this is the right number to take this note down at. Now I can't do that.
Exactly.
And you're working extra hard to even get a decent note.
Oh, yeah. And then you bring up a great point, is what mistakes do people make in this business? And it's when they identify as, well, I have to buy property no matter what, right? Or I have to buy a note no matter what, because I'm a note buyer or I'm a property buyer. There comes a point when you have to take a step back and say, is this really the best decision I could make right now with my capital? And not to have the fear of not doing a deal. That was a big lesson.
Okay.
Huge lesson. Yeah. Sometimes
And
it's
when
better
do you
not to
feel
do a
like
deal.
that lesson came home for you?
Because
Because that is a huge lesson.
Yeah.
Because
Oh,
the
yeah.
whole concept is I'm taking it down, I'm building a portfolio, I'm on a
Right.
track. Like this is
Right.
this is what I'm doing. For me, it was my identity. I remember
Absolutely.
yelling at my husband going, you don't understand. This is my
Right.
identity. I can't,
Right.
da, 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 right?
Exactly.
So I'm with you on it, right? I'm not throwing you under the bus because I
No,
haven't
not
been
at
there
all.
myself. I've been
Right.
on that bus, right?
Yeah.
At what point do you go, this isn't my identity. I don't have to do a deal.
Right.
I don't have to do a note. I don't have to. Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
when
So
did that
once I
shift for
changed,
you?
when I shifted my identity from becoming a real estate investor to an investor, that I'm a wise investor. I'm not a property flipper. I'm not a buy and holder per se. But what I do is I look at it as, with my given skill set, where is the best place to spend my time and money, and to be as agnostic as possible about what the answer is. because there's something to be said about, well, if I know nothing about something, do I have the skill set to ramp up pretty quickly to have an edge in that? Or do I kind of rely on my core skill set and see if it transfers? And luckily, notes and property have a very nice complementary aspect to it. So buying debt or buying the actual asset itself, it's very complementary. So it worked out really well for me when I had that kind of realization, saying, look, I'm an investor, and a smart investor doesn't always play in the market, right? Sometimes they reel it in, or they shift.
So since you were already following Bruce,
Yeah.
and so you've gotten, I always call it the memo in the mail. Like, did somebody send you
Yeah.
the memo that we were going to head into a downturn? And if you were following Bruce, then yes, you did. You were one of
Yes,
the people who did
exactly
get
it.
the memo. So
That's
how'd
actually
you,
yeah.
go ahead.
Yeah, so I was going to say that's how FIBI started.
Right.
Is
Yes, it
that
is. Yeah.
right? Because it was right at that time when everybody was like too euphoric about real estate, and then I was like making the call. I remember Jeremy and I saying, "This is just there's a lot of bad signs out there," and it was brutal because so many people were just, "Oh no, you got to buy, you got to buy. It's just a temporary hiccup," and we're like, "No, no, no, this is serious." I went to see Bruce, and all the numbers made as much sense as they did when I first saw him when he did the California comeback. He did, the meltdown. And I started to get out of Dodge. I started cleaning out my portfolio and moving to safer havens. And and I told Bruce this, I said, you really saved my life, my financial life.
Yeah.
Because you helped me grow my portfolio. And then much later, you helped me protect it.
Right.
So, yeah.
Yes, and I didn't get the memo. So
Well,
I was not an avid Bruce Norris follower at the time. I didn't get
right,
the memo, so I actually did experience that downturn, and that was a huge
right,
shaper for me in my understanding of real estate. Right? And have ever since been much more passionate about the economics, the general, like all ships rise and fall on the tide. Well, what's the tide? Because the tide doesn't care about me. It's not going to
yeah.
rise and
You got
fall
to pay attention to the tide.
I'm so
Exactly.
brilliant, right? Oh yeah, I'm so brilliant. I'm going to control the tides. No, it doesn't exactly,
Right.
right? Got to pay attention to the tide because I'm just one of a whole bunch of ships trying to do a job here, and
Yep.
I'm going to get
Yep.
nailed, right?
Oh, God. Yeah. Yeah.
So you've shifted. So you weathered that by
Uh-huh.
following Bruce Norris, and so that's
Right.
not a big story for you. You just shifted the portfolio intentionally, consciously, and thoughtfully as an investor.
Right.
Where are you now? Because you've moved away from notes, you have the identity of an investor. So where are
Right.
you now? Because now you're using that a general identity for your greater freedom.
Yes, absolutely. So, now that I had a portfolio that was generating some, good passive income, it gave me the luxury of stepping back and saying, okay, what do I want my next half of life to look like? And I always found that what I felt really suited me well was not a large volume business, but a small volume business, but with large margins. So, and I said, well, how do I replicate that? So, when I talk to people, I say, well, it's the idea of, are you going to go to Walmart to buy something where they sell millions and millions of pieces of, doodads or whatever with a small margin, and they do very well? Or are you going to be kind of like that, the Nordstrom, where there's, it's much more of a, concierge type of service? And I said, well, I want to be kind of the concierge type where I have very specialized knowledge. So where I am now is I look for very complicated and complex transactions. So for instance, I've been working with properties that have title issues, title flaws, even notes that have title flaws. So even though I've strayed away from buying institutional notes, I still buy private notes. I just bought one last month, as a matter of fact. And most of these deals, I've seen a lot of the competition, so to speak, not know what to do next with them, so they kind of move on because they have this other business model.
That's right.
Where I can kind of work on, 20, leads, and if I close one of them, it's a very nice paycheck. And so I enjoy kind of getting into the nitty gritty of kind of unraveling things. So frequently what comes up is, there's a probate issue or a title issue where somebody has passed away and they didn't pass along title correctly. Or it's an abandoned property that has a hoarder situation, or there's I work a lot with cities that have, you know, code compliance issues where they can't locate this owner, and they're like, look, we're going to have to condemn this thing if we don't find somebody. And so I really enjoy being this niche of a niche of a niche where, you know, usually the properties that I buy or that I acquire are free and clear or have very little debt. And if you can imagine in Southern California,
That's useful.
the equity that's available there. So a little bit of a brag here is like, you know, for so long I hear people me say, well, you can't cash flow in Southern California.
Right. I'm one of those people who will say that. You can't
Right,
cash flow in Southern
right.
California except under exceptional circumstances.
And that's the caveat is I find the exceptional circumstances
Right.
where I find a hoarder house that I bought with owners with seller financing because it was unfinanceable any other way. And I created the terms where I have a property in a neighborhood that cash flows all day long, and I bought it for, I don't know, 60% under value or something like that.
Okay.
So, yeah. And it takes those kind of, you know, niche markets and special situations, because you're right, you can't go on the MLS and say, you know, throw a dart and say, oh, I'm going to cash flow on this. That's not really not going to happen.
So how do you cultivate these hard to find this, you know, you're not, I mean, yeah, you could scour the MLS, but that's not gonna, you're gonna look at thousands of properties to find those few, right? So
Yeah.
who are you using as your connections to bring these things to you? You're building a brand, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of people being able to say, hey, I know a guy who does this.
Right, right.
Right?
So, yeah, so a couple of places that kind of feed my pipeline are referrals. I belong to a networking group where there are a lot of professionals that if they run into issues, they refer it to me.
Okay.
But most of them, it comes from my kind of proprietary database that I've kind of created a way to really niche down what I call, you know, I look at a big universe of properties in the, you know, the 3 or 4 counties that I look at, and I can condense them down to 20 top properties that I want to work on. So I'm usually working on 20 properties at any one time, and that's very manageable.
So you're actually going by property then. So when you say you've got a big database, it's not a database of lawyers and people who specialize
No.
in probates and
Right.
complicated properties. You're actually
Right.
saying it's a database as in I
Actual
bring in thousands of properties
property data
and I use
itself.
specific parameters to
Correct.
narrow it down to these are my 20 I'm going to focus on until I close a couple of these. And then
Correct.
every 3 months or 4 months, you can probably re-pull that database in order to refill your queue.
That's correct.
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah, that's
In theory.
exactly it. Yeah, exactly. It starts out with a big funnel, and then as I go through my little algorithm, it comes down to where like I have to decide what are the top 20 leads I'm going to work on.
Okay. And then you work on them by contacting whoever is associated with that property, whether it's a lawyer or probate or a family member, whoever
Right.
it is. Because that's the
Tracking
whole
down
point
people.
about these properties is
Yeah.
sometimes you don't even know where to start with the contact.
Right. It's like, okay, let's find the owner. Oh, well, that owner's passed away. Well, who inherits that property legally, right? Oh, there's these, you know, 3 children. Oh, one of them is in Rhode Island. You know, so
Right.
you have to kind of piece it all together.
You're gonna piece it together and you have to use like, you know, skip tracing or background checks of some kind to be able to just find some possible phone numbers.
That's exactly it. Yeah. Private
I'm assuming.
investigators I also use.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. That is complicated. I mean, if you're actually bringing in a private investigator to follow down the correct title on a property to find where these people are, that is complex and abstract. I mean, that is sort of like, gee, what's, you know, nobody really knows where this, you know, where the owner is of this.
Right, right. And it's amazing in this digital world, there are some people that are just very hard to find. I have a whole stack of people like, I don't know where they are. So,
You actually have like, I've, you know, been working on these 20 properties and, you know, I have this stack here of like 3 or 4 probably per round. I'm like, I
Yeah.
never even got anywhere on these
Right,
guys, right?
right.
Like I just,
And then I give it to the private investigators, and some of them put their hands up, right? So it's a
Right.
matter of how, you know, how far do you want to go? And
Yeah.
I will continue to pursue those for sure. But it's actually very engaging. It's like, oh my God, I know somebody else is going to quit right now, but I'm going to keep going, and I'm going to figure it out.
well, and I guess, so let's, you know, my brain goes to talent, skill sets, and lifestyle, right? Like you're not out pounding the pavement. The operative part of this is that you're not actually door knocking to find these properties. You're actually using a lot of technology and phones,
Right. I use a lot of technology on the front end, and then the door knocking comes afterwards.
but then you're calling.
Yeah, I'm calling, but I also will if I find out, oh, their grandson lives 20 miles from me. Well, I'm gonna go pop in and say hello if they don't answer my phone calls. And I had that situation where I had to I knew where they were, but they were not responding.
Okay.
So you have to kind of, take it to the next level.
So, because I'm just trying to go like, you're not physically at the, so it's like if you're a flipper,
Yeah.
right? And that's what you love is, swinging a hammer and running a team, and that just invigorates you.
Yeah.
Then probably this isn't what you should be doing as a
No.
way of becoming asset agnostic, right?
Right. Right.
Because the
Right.
beauty of this system is it truly is asset agnostic, right? It could be a multifamily, it could be a strip mall, it could be a single family residence, it could be a multi-unit,
Mm-hmm.
because it really is reliant upon developing the pool, bringing it down, whether it's a pool of notes, a pool of multi-units, or a pool of single families, bringing it down to whatever your specific note problem, title problem, complication is.
Right.
Because that's really what you're solving. It's not even, it's because title is held on almost every property of some kind.
Yes. Yes.
Right. So
Exactly it.
yeah. So it's actually, I'm sorry, I'm just describing, I'm guessing, right? I'm just filling in the holes of what you're describing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Title is a very fascinating thing to me, and it's like watching paint dry for a lot of other people. So I noticed that it was like, well,
is.
I might be, I might be onto something where I'm not going to have a lot of competition.
And that's good.
Yeah,
That is good
yeah,
because it allows you again to have ownership over your area,
right.
which is good. So because of time, I'm going to switch a little bit. So
Sure.
one of the things we talked about, so now I understand what you're doing currently and how
Mhm.
you cultivate yourself as an investor, right?
Yes.
But part of our cultivation, at least part of my cultivation, is when you have your backside handed to you.
Yes.
When, real estate comes along, and as much as we try to be risk averse and sound and use our education and our intelligence to calculate things and work things out for those of us whose brains work that way, there's still a time when real estate will not work and you
Yes.
will have your backside handed to you. So
Absolutely.
tell us a story about when that happened for you. How did you show up, grow up,
Yep.
and what lesson did you learn from that?
Oh gosh, this is one of the most painful, but one of the most instructive times in my life where
Yes. Let's hear it. As
yeah,
long-term investors, right? We know
yep,
these stories, right?
yeah,
Like you said, I'm gonna confess. Like you said when we first we were warming up for the show, you're
uh-huh.
like, "Hey, should we start with the story?" And I'm like, "Yes." All my longtime investors are like, "Let's just get to the reality of the stories of real estate because
Right.
that's really what will challenge you and bring you to being, a master in your own field. But
Yeah,
you have to live through it."
absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Tell me the story.
So I had an incredibly fortunate run of buying multifamily properties, and I was working with partners. And so there was a point where I had the silly notion that I actually had something to do with this. Because, when markets are screaming, right?
Right.
When they're doing
Yeah,
really
you think
well,
you're so smart. Yeah.
yeah, you think,
Yeah.
wow, I could just pick the winners, can I?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I started to get involved with other group projects or syndication projects, and a couple of them seemed like they should be slam dunks. They were out of state, and the exit strategy looked pretty clean to me. And so I went ahead and I pulled the trigger and bought into, several $1 million worth of multifamily projects. Some were redevelopment projects where we were going to convert use from industrial to multi-tenant, commercial, things like that. Really exciting stuff.
Yeah. And I can see that was very exciting to you because it's right
Oh,
along the
yeah.
same thing, right? It's the
Right.
title and it's converting title or zoning and converting zoning. Yeah, sure.
Right.
And it adds great value to the property.
It does. However, I didn't have the skill set needed to play in that league, and I found out that some of the people that were in the partnership didn't either.
Yeah.
And because I didn't have a majority ownership in those partnerships, like I
Right.
did in the other ones,
Right.
when I trace back my success, most of my success came where I either had a majority ownership or I had a highly influential position in the project. Here I was a lot of minority ownerships because I thought, well, what do they always say to you? Spread your risk, right? So I spread my risk into several projects, and it was so diluted that I had almost no influence in any of them. And when the market started to tank, and I was like, oh, we've got to do something. I was like, a voice in the wilderness.
Yeah.
Nobody was
Nobody's
listening to
listening
me.
because the market's
And,
screaming. Of course, the
right,
market's not going to tank. What are you talking about?
right.
You're just a
And
naysayer.
I just watched my capital evaporate in front of my eyes. And I want to say that it was hard losing the money, but I think the hardest thing was losing my confidence. When I lost my confidence, I was like, I am not a very smart investor at all. I don't,
Right.
I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. Look how much money I mean, I lost a lot of money. And I
So I'm
was,
laughing because I know the statement. I
ah,
thought I was really smart. I clearly
right,
don't know what I'm doing because look at how much money I lost. Like you
right,
can't like walk away from like there's the number in front of your face going
right.
blomp, blomp, blomp. You fricked it. You must have somehow fricked it. Even
Yep.
if you're not the only player involved, you must have somehow fricked it up because there is that number,
Yes. Yep.
right?
Exactly. And
Sorry,
oh
that's
God,
my,
it hurt. No,
it
you're right.
hurts.
You perfectly characterized that whole experience. And the brain trash that will kind of go through your brain, the
Yeah.
garbage,
Yeah.
it was debilitating, and I had to get my confidence back. And how I kind of transformed that, and I have to admit that there's still that voice will still pop up every now and then, but at least I've developed kind of like rules of the road of how to be a smart investor. So it's given me kind of like this playbook. So now I've transformed that identity into saying, "Oh, I'm a crap investor." Now when I look back at it, I said, "Look, all the ones that I have control over, I did really well."
Right.
Right? And I was like,
Right.
"Wow, you know what? I'm smarter because some of my partners were much older than me and had much more experience than I did." And I kind of took this, and I gave up my role as a decision maker and said, "Oh, these guys know better than me.
Yeah.
They're
And
smarter than me. They're older than me. They have way more
And they're
experience."
supposed to be experts in those assets when I'm not,
Ex-
that asset class.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And this is like, these were bigger projects than I ever had done before. And I just watched it, spiral down the drain. And then when I transformed and said, look, I actually know what I'm doing, because I started to give myself grace and then actually do more deals on my own. And then I actually took investor money where I was in charge of their money. And that was really hard. And we did really well. And all of a sudden, I started to notice I was getting my confidence back.
Right.
And then that helped me develop kind of my playbook of, okay, what am I good at? What am I going to invest in? What am I not going to invest in? Right? Because sometimes that's even more important to know what you're not going to invest in. Right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. I have a lesson around that one as of
yeah,
this year. I have,
I'm
I
sure.
have a new
I'm
lesson
sure we
coming
could talk
this
forever.
year, right? What am I not going to invest in? I have a new additive to my list of what I'm not going to invest in.
Right.
Right.
Right. Yep.
Yeah. And it's not so much that the asset itself doesn't work. It's I don't work with the asset. I don't
Yeah.
work with that process with that asset. I
Correct.
don't work well
Yep.
in that environment.
And it's the wisdom to understand that it's not a judgment on you at all. It's just like, hey, I'm really good at this stuff, and when I go into that area, I'm not so good. So let me just do this stuff and do really, really well. And going back to kind of that tough cycle in my life, is it took so much energy away from the stuff I was good at, because I kept on, oh my God, we got to salvage this thing, we got to da da da, and then then the good stuff that I'm really, really good at started to get neglected. And then once the switch came on, I was like, wow, I got to do more of that stuff. And I turned it around. I mean, I turned it around fast. And, the returns started, and luckily, knock on wood, that it really, I was lucky enough to have mentors in my life that salvaged my confidence and helped me get it back, and to say, look, you know what you're doing. You just have to kind of, tweak it a little bit, and then you'll be fine. And they were right. So once I focused on kind of this, really kind of stuff that I really get excited about, and make really good money at, it became fun again. So, I'm so thankful that I was allowed to have another chance to jump back in
Right.
jump back in the game.
Right. Yeah. I had a previous business partner where it knocked him out of the game. Like
Yeah.
when the downturn hit, and as I
Yep.
was salvaging everything I could salvage, I was able to salvage enough that it didn't knock me out of the game.
Right.
And I had to bring my ego back into, it's a process of humbling and then re-accepting the responsibility, right? Because this
Absolutely.
is,
Yep.
oh my
That
God.
was really it. It was accountability, right? But the pure accountability of saying, this is what I'm responsible for and this is what I'm not responsible for. Right. Right. So
Yeah.
you can't take it all because it wasn't all your fault, but the part that you are accountable for, that's what helps you grow.
You said it perfectly. I don't know
Yeah.
what to add on that. Like you just said it really well. Because and we could have gone specific to, like you went specific into the lesson. The lesson you took away from it was, when I do it my way, I know I'm successful. I can count on myself to be successful in this area. Let's
Right.
do that.
Yes.
Right. And if I do that, then my self-confidence can stay intact.
Right.
Right.
Yep.
But you also said it really well, which is, but not beating yourself up for shit that wasn't yours. Excuse my
Exactly.
language. I think,
Yeah. Don't
I
own
think it's going to
something
have to be
that-
bleeped out. But for stuff that isn't, for stuff that wasn't yours, like you didn't create it. I mean,
Right.
all ships rise and fall on the tide. Like we talked
Yep.
about that. Right.
Yep.
And I got passionate about that because I realized that one of my biggest wipeouts was that I didn't understand the tide. If I had understood the tide better,
Yep.
I wouldn't have been so ego driven of, oh, look at this. I've earned so much, I've gained this
Yeah.
umpteen $1 million since the blah, 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 since, like
Exactly.
all that,
Yep.
I have a term for it that I use with my husband that I'm not allowed to use on the stereo, on the radio, but, or on this podcast. But yes, I mean, you start getting all like cocky about how much you think you know. And then it's like, no, if I'm in this slot, in this lane, stay in your lane.
Yes.
Right.
Right.
Then you're successful. And
Right.
that's where you can keep your self-confidence intact and your investment portfolio intact.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And it was good whoever brought to your attention, like, hey, dude, you're so focused on what's not working. You're going to let what is working slip away.
Right. And what really was helpful is they said, here are the skills that could really make a difference for you. This is what you need. And that's what I spent those years really kind of retooling and saying, okay, here's what my strengths are. I just have to refine these. And that's where I ended up, and it's worked really well.
Well, good job on you that you took it seriously.
Oh yeah.
You didn't just blow them off and say, no, I can do everything in real estate, right? If I'm a truly brilliant real estate investor, can't I do everything? Mm-hmm. This is my lesson this year, just so you know.
Yeah.
Just owning it, right? Just owning it, right? If I'm a truly brilliant real estate investor, shouldn't I be able to do everything? It's like, no, actually, you shouldn't. Mm-hmm. Your ego is getting in the way. My ego is getting in my own way.
Right.
So I got to learn my lesson again, my own lesson, right?
Yeah.
So
they're there for a reason, for sure.
So congratulations. So it caused you to grow up.
Absolutely.
Caused you to humble.
Yes.
Accept the truth of who you are.
Yes.
Right. So now we're both more humble and more mature. Mm-hmm. And you're still successful in real estate, and you're taking care of your 3 kids in the middle of this, Zoom schooling environment.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm actually teaching my oldest son about real estate, and he's sent out a bunch of marketing. I'm like mentoring him and his best friend. They're both 18, and they're going to buy vacant lots and learn how to flip them. So
nice.
So much fun to teach. It really is.
Nice.
Yeah.
One, and you like teaching, right?
I love teaching. I love it. Yeah.
You love teaching.
Yeah.
So, well, super cool. So right now, if somebody were to get a hold of you, what could they bring to you? What could you bring to them? Like, why would people, because we haven't gotten clear on your business model. So I don't know, like normally I say, hey, if anybody wants to blank, blank, blank with you, what's your phone number and how do they get a hold of you? Like, what do you need? What do you want? What are you looking for? Like people want to get a hold of you. How does that work?
Yeah. Well, there's 2 things I'm looking for. I'm always looking for private lenders that are interested in being part of some of these very profitable, very unique deals. Mm-hmm. I'm always looking for these unique deals. So if there are other investors out there that run across a property, or even if you're not an investor and you run across a property, you're like, I don't know where this goes next. I can't find the owner, or the owner is, has passed away and we don't know where the heirs are, and the city wants to tear it down. Like all these layers upon layers of complications.
Right.
Call me and I'll untangle it, and we'll figure out a way for everybody to win on it. So.
All right.
Yeah.
So this is Ellis San Jose. So how do they get a hold of you?
They can email me at Ellis at the Note Guys. I still have my Note Guys site.
Okay.
Or they could always call my office at 805-852-7418.
Okay. Say the phone number again.
805-852-7418.
Thank you, Ellis, for taking the time. It's
You're
been
very welcome.
forever since I've
Yes.
literally seen your face. I think it's literally been years, even
It's been a
though
while.
you're still officially my facilitator at my meeting with me.
That's so funny.
But hey, I'm grateful to be part of FIBI. I'm grateful
Yeah.
you started it. I'm grateful that the real estate field is moving, it's transitioning to
Yes.
understanding that education and network are the most valuable things that you can have in real estate. It's not your capacity to sell a book. So
Yeah.
I'm really grateful that you guys were part of that movement, and it's getting more and more true in real estate in general. So thank you for doing that.
You're welcome.
Thank you for being you. Thank you for sharing the authenticity and the truth of what it means to be an investor, agnostic of class, and more focused on what works, who you are and how it works.
Yep.
All right. I am Christina Suter. Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Breakthrough, and tune in next week for our next podcast.